All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. I love to entertain and I love to kick things off with a little bit of music. It's a little thing that I'm doing to hype up the energy of the room. So thanks very much for entertaining me. I appreciate it. Avani and Miss Muppet are on the live today. Thank you so much for joining. Yeah, just give me a second, guys. I have a couple of announcements to get through. Then I'm going to be opening up the panel to opposition and friendlies alike, so that we can have a great discussion about the topics that are on the background today. All right, so let's kick it off with our announcements. The RawReal merch store has updated some of its items. You can go to www.rawrealmerch.com, which includes our adult human female and adult human male collection. All proceeds and profits this month will be going to the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. For more information about them, please visit www.menshealthfoundation.ca. I've also updated the link tree in my bio to include a link to my Discord and other social media platforms. So please feel free to go in there and give us a follow across all social media platforms. At the end of each live, I will be uploading the recordings to the YouTube channel. So if you missed it and you want to catch it later on, please feel free to go over there and have a listen. Next.
I roar for my tiny tinies.
I always roar for my tiny tinies. The following is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. We do not tolerate any forms of racism, bigotry, or hateful, harmful rhetoric. All guests will be expected to maintain respect and decorum, and most importantly, we are here to attack the ideas and not the individuals. We do not condone or promote any form of doxing. We also love the TikTok shop, so everybody, TikTok shop in the comments. Announcement for the moderators: please do not block or remove any of the comments unless they're making racist comments or threats of any kind. Final request: please do not report the live. We are practitioners of free, honest, and respectful speech. All right, without further ado, my last announcement was we were supposed to host a 1v1 debate this evening between Avani and Jess Buck. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, Jess could not join us this evening, but I decided that we should have the discussion nonetheless. So I'm going to keep it to a maximum of 3 friendlies, and the rest of the box will be open to opposition to have back and forth discussion and debate. Avani, thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Let me turn the volume up so I can hear you. And thank you so much for joining and for reaching out and asking to put this together. I really do like having these debates, although I wasn't intending on having one today, but you might as well do it. Go hard or go home. Muppet, thank you for joining. How are you this evening, girlfriend?
Oh, I'm fabulous, boyfriend. Glad to be up on the panel. So
Yes. You ready for a debate? Did you bring your pen and paper?
yeah, I got my pen and my paper.
Not the pen.
Awesome. Well, I know where Avani and where Muppet stand. Fresh, thank you so much for joining the debate. Can I get your age for TikTok, please?
Hi, I'm Fresh. I am 21.
Thank you so much for joining. What are your thoughts about the topics on the background?
So I do know Avani, so Avani already knows my stance. I believe that sex is binary. I believe that trans women fall under a category of the male sex, that they are not women. I believe that trans women should not have access to female-only spaces. I believe that LGBT should not be taught in schools K-12. And I do not think children should have access to GAC.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. If you don't mind, I will drop you for a little while just because I would like opposition to come up, and I only have one more spot for a friendly, and I'm waiting for their arrival. Is that all right, Fresh?
Yeah, that's fine.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. But stick around. All right. Thank you. All right. MUFC, thank you for joining. What are your thoughts on the topic in the background? I think you're a friendly as well.
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's the third one. It's the trans women have access to female-only spaces. I think it's not female-only spaces. It's stuff like sports that I think annoys me a little bit because obviously women work so hard to get in the position they do, and I think you've seen in the media quite a lot more recently than in the past that trans females who are originally male are dominating women's sports, and I think that's something that I think is upsetting for most. Genetically females, and I think that they've worked that hard to get there in like weightlifting competitions, stuff where men do have an advantage, and I think if a man transitions into a woman, it offers them a huge advantage, to be honest.
Absolutely. While we're waiting for opposition, if you are opposition and you would like to join the discussion, please send a request to join. And in the meantime, I might as well pull up some education about how the male body always maintains a physical advantage despite having undergoing certain forms of medical transition. Avani, do you want to touch base on it?
Yeah, so when we talk about, there's over 5,000 differences between males and females. When we talk about the majority effects of estrogen or estradiol on the male body, it mostly affects just muscle and fat distribution around the body, as well as the skin and hair. When we talk about, like, for example, the heart size, the lung size, bone length, bone width, hand span, all of these other things that are not affected by the estradiol, there's still a significant difference. So there is still that male advantage when it comes to these sports.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm reading off literature from biologist Dr. Emma Hilton and clinician physiologist Dr. Tommy Lundberg. Competitive sports is divided on the basis of sex due to differences in male and female athletic ability. Such sex differences begin in the womb and develop further in response to hormones during puberty. As both sexes mature, males exhibit physical performance advantages over females. This is why we separate sports by sex. However, this separation has excluded transgender women from female sports. To solve this, the International Olympic Committee determined criteria by which a transgender woman could be eligible to compete in the female category. This criteria requires testosterone levels to be suppressed to 10 nanomoles per liter for at least 12 months before competition. Despite regulation, a major question remains unanswered. Does this testosterone suppression remove the male performance advantage? And the answer is no. So we'll start with you have to break it down into two questions. The first one is, what are the biological differences between males and females, and compared to untrained, hold on, we may have a guest here. It's a friendly, but I'll let him up. Compared to untrained Yeah, well, in the meantime, we don't have any other opposition willing to come up. Trained females, equivalent males exhibit 45% more lean body mass and 30% less fat. In muscle mass, 33% more lower body and 40% more upper body. In muscle strength, 57% grip strength and 55% more knee extension peak torque. And anthropometry, I don't even know how to pronounce that correctly, and bone geometry of 9.4% greater femur length, 12% greater humerus length, and 14.6% radius length in tendon properties, 83% more force, and 41% more stiffness in terms of the amount of oxygen one can utilize during intense exercise, known as VO2 max. Males are able to utilize between 20 to 50% more oxygen. So there are a vast number of areas so far in which there are biological competitive differences. The second question is, how big is the sports performance gap between males and females? And if we set the female performance level at 100% and compared to males, we can see that males have a competitive advantage starting at 10 to 13% in activities like rowing, swimming, track running, and 16 to 22% in field jumping, tennis serve, golf driver speed, handball shot, and pole vaulting. 29 to 34% in cricket, volleyball, serve. Cricket, volleyball, serve, golf, long drive, weightlifting, and 50% more advantage in baseball, pitch, and field hockey. The more upper body strength is required in the sport, the larger the male performance has advantage. Sorry, that was a little long-winded. I know. So there you have it. Now, when it comes to public restrooms, Muppet, where do you think having trans women or transsexuals gaining access into those spaces?
Wait, what was the first part? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Public restrooms.
Who's the question addressed to?
The Muppet.
So I believe that women's restrooms is not for any males, whether they are a man or a trans woman.
I do not disagree. All right. Well, the next female-only space would be locker rooms. So, Rue, what do you think about males accessing locker rooms, female-only?
Yeah, I agree with like what Muppet said about bathrooms. I think any female space is not for any males. I did have a clarifying question as a British person. How old are K through 12? I don't think it should be taught in school. I'm just curious.
When you get to grade 12, shit, I don't even remember. I think you're
Like 17, 18?
17.
So it's like kindergarten until like 17, 18?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, we have guests. It's Liz Talk. Hey, Liz.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, thank you. What are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, you know me. I think that all spaces should be protected by their gender. Female spaces should remain female. Male spaces should remain male. And I think that everybody deserves to be safe. So obviously there should be a space for them, but everybody deserves their own space.
I concur with that. Does anybody disagree? If anybody disagrees, please feel free to send a request. It kind of feels like opposition doesn't really come around much these days.
Well, you'd be surprised. So that's actually the funny thing. So Lily went live today, and I realized more than ever why we really got to like. I hope that this chain continues. That a door was just beginning, because it's like people were subscribing to his account. Like, I mean, like out the wazoo. Like, he was almost maxed out, and that's insane to me. Like, and the fact that his comments were subscribe only, so there were people commenting that, it's not like he was subscribing to his own stuff or something or anything. Like, these were actual people that, so clearly we're not getting the message out quick enough or enough.
Well, I was in that live, well, not in the live, but I was watching the live earlier today, and I tried to get in there. There were only 3 people before me, but he wasn't letting up any guests. I have my own reasons for calling Lily he, because I truly don't believe that they are transgender by nature. I don't feel as though that they suffer from any form of dysphoria. Having observed their behaviors and content a little bit further, it makes me question if they are autosexual or autoheterosexual by nature, because they do ultimately seek female suitors. So, but I tried to get up there, and there were a lot of trolls in the beginning. He did have his comments open to everybody, and at that point there was about 3,000 to 4,000 people watching the live, or at least in the live. And then when he went over to sub only in the chat, then it went back down to like, I don't know, a couple 1,100 or 1,000, a couple of hundred after that. But yeah, people are subscribing. I do probably think that people are one-time subscribing too, just because they safeguard their chat with the sub-only chat. And I suspect that some people want to pay one time just to be annoying. But ultimately, they're safeguarded by their mods as well. So it's
Yeah.
hard to get to these people.
Could I reply to a comment, Raw? Oh, sorry, Liz. I thought you were finished.
Oh, I was just gonna say I agree with the pronouns thing because it is also harmful to people who are actually trans and people who are actually deserve to have their pronouns respected, because these people are making a mockery of people who do have body dysmorphia, who are trans, who are having actual, these things to where their pronouns need to be respected. So yeah, that's all I was gonna say. You can go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to reply to a comment. Someone said that wouldn't someone have to out themselves by going into a quote trans bathroom? And I think yes, which is why like when I do say a third bathroom, I advocate for like a unisex single occupancy stall, so it wouldn't like label someone as, oh, this is a transgender person. It just creates a space where everyone can feel comfortable and safe and have, the right to go to the toilet.
I had a thought on that too. So something I was thinking of, we have a lot of people in the community that, we seem to hit a lot of roadblocks with things, but I actually do see this happening. If there were a unisex third bathroom, there would be plenty of non-binary people that would go use it. There would be plenty of there would be plenty of people who would be able to protect each other in that bathroom, because at the end of the day, it's not just going to be trans women and trans men. There's plenty of non-binary and there's lots of things I have not heard of yet that I've got too much to actually focus on to dive in. I learn as I go. I learn as I'm told, because at this point we're just relearning new things that mean the same thing that we've been learning, but whatever. So but yeah, that's what I was going to add.
All right. Well, I think that the message is clear across the board here and on the panel when it comes to female-only spaces, which include public bathrooms, locker rooms, DV shelters, prisons, sports, and other areas, I guess, that I haven't listed, should be reserved for females only. But does anybody want to talk about any of the others? I do have questions that I can ask, and we can dive into certain aspects. Okay, I'll pick one. Let's talk about gender affirming care. Do you think that there are any forms of gender affirming care that would be suitable for children? And I'll list them off. Pronouns and social transition, puberty blockers, access to cross-sex hormones, or medical surgery to remove or alter their natal parts. Who wants to go first?
I don't mind. I would say no. I think maybe if they added some sort of counseling therapy in there, I could say that would be appropriate for kids. But the ones that you listed, I would say no.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't include counseling and therapy. But what do you think about social transition? Do you think that a child should be able to dress in the clothing that they want, despite it being the societal norm of what they should be dressing in?
I think clothes are a bit, I think in schools it might open them up to bullying, which obviously then would make them feel more separated. So I would say a young boy in a dress, no, but a girl wearing trousers, I wouldn't consider that sex-based clothing. So in general, I would say social transition, no. But I don't think all clothing is completely segregated by sex, if that makes sense. Because I think I can try and find the research, because I know someone's going to go, oh, source. There is, I'll try and find it, but there's research that says that social transitioning can actually be harmful for kids. I will try and find it. But I would know.
Because of societal rejection, right? I understand that. But then it kind of it begs the next question is do you think bullying is beneficial at all? Because the reason I asked that question, I feel the last couple of young generations have been coddled or coddling their children, wrapping them in bubble wrap, catering to their every whining need or request. And it just seems as though that parents they don't want to put up with it. They don't want to retaliate. They don't want to put 10 toes deep in the ground. They'd rather just give up and give the child what it is that they want. And that, I think, makes soft children. It makes soft people. There's no diversity or adversity in that. Not diversity. There's no adversity in that. There's no form of character building in that. I was bullied, don't get me wrong, but I also stood up for myself. And that's where I gained a lot of confidence, was that at some point I didn't give a shit. Thank you. I didn't give a shit how much bigger you were. I just wasn't willing to take your shit anymore. So if it meant that I was going to get a beating, but I was going to get one in, well, at least I got respect for getting one in. And I got much more respect than that, because people saw that I was, hitting up on a kid that was almost twice my size. All right.
I do have a question,
for
sorry,
my tiny
for
tiny.
the people on the panel, regarding what the prompt over here. Is sex binary? There's men, women, trans women, women? No. Should trans women have access to a female-only space? Depends. Should LGBT be taught at school? No.
What's
Should
the
children have
question?
access to gender-affirming care? No. Who disagrees with what I said?
Muppet.
Well, we don't really disagree. We're kind of confused. Like you said,
Yeah, you
should
said yeah.
transgender. You said
Sorry.
should transgender women have access to female-only spaces? You said sometimes. I'm kind of confused by that. What do you mean?
Because there are places, well, we would need to define female-only spaces. So female-only as
Well, it's a
a
space that's
female,
for
like a
female
women,
only.
a women clothing section. Is that a female-only space?
We were talking about bathroom. I don't. Why are you doing
No,
this?
no, no, because that's
Okay,
not a
so
female-only
let's
space.
provide some context then.
Yeah.
If you want clarification, I can give you some. So I'll rattle them off for you: public restrooms, locker rooms, DV shelters, prisons, and sports.
Definitely not sports.
Okay, prisons,
No,
DV shelter,
no,
locker room,
no,
public restroom.
no.
Okay.
But I mean, have you ever seen a bathroom police? Like somebody that's out there to check who gets inside the restroom and who, I've never seen that.
No, because we ultimately expect people to police themselves when we're walking out in society, right? There are rules and laws that we have to abide by. That's what makes us law-abiding citizens when we walk outside in society. And so the expectation is that people would police themselves. And so I think the biggest issue that started this is that the transgender ideology somewhat allowed individuals to not put in the effort that transsexuals had to assimilate to what society standards of what a woman would look like. And if that transsexual had not accomplished that passability, where they would not be clocked, then they decided that it would give them access to those spaces. But when the transgender ideology started to blow up, it forced a whole bunch of men to come out and dress like women, but not assimilate to the standard that society upholds for women. And these are full-grown dudes wearing beards.
I roar for my tiny tinies.
Who are entering female spaces, not because they're transitioning for the sake of relieving dysphoria. They're doing it to chase feelings of euphoria.
Okay, so here's my question here. What, like a trans person walks in the woman's bathroom, you can tell that this individual used to be a dude. What you gonna do about it?
Well, there's verbal confrontation that you can employ once
I roar for my tiny tinies.
because it's important that you don't make that person feel as though that they're welcome in that space. So you would ultimately use your voice to say politely, please use another facility.
Like, and what if that person is actually a woman that just has like hormone issues? You would look like a fucking idiot.
Well, I have a question that actually kind of, and this is a genuine question because I just had this thought because I felt like a hypocrite. So I was at work the other day. I work at Kroger. There's, and it's, I had two instances I've been to the bathroom at work, right? The first time I went, was the first day I was there. My trainer was with me, and he made a point. I don't know if it's because I look gay or whatever, or he's like, but he made a point to say, your bathroom's down there, mine's right here, see you in a minute. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, okay, whatever. So I go to the bathroom. Well, this last time I tried to go, both stalls were full in the women's. And the irony of this, I texted my best friend. I was like, it's so funny because I went and I knocked on the men's. No one was in there. It's you open and it's a stall. You can lock it. So I went and used the bathroom because it's that time of the month. I really had to go, and you could lock this bathroom though, like completely. So, am I a hypocrite for that?
Sorry, I
No.
glitched out for a second. I don't know if that's happening to anybody else, where you glitch out of the live, but the live keeps going, and then when you come back, it just says resume. It's happened to me the last two times I've done lives, but the live at least has stayed up, but it kicked me out, and I just have to come back in. But I
It
don't see
happens.
it.
It's been happening since like the beginning of TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's the first time I'm experiencing it after a year being on. So
okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
haven't seen that on like everybody's. Bonnie's yours has done it some, hasn't it?
what?
Yours has done it a couple times, hasn't it?
No.
No, oh no, it's Envy's and Bella's does it.
Okay, so what about should
Okay.
LGBT be taught at
Wait,
schools?
wait, can I say
K-12?
something about the restrooms real quick? I was
Yeah,
waiting for
yeah.
y'all to finish.
yeah.
So I'm just, for me, it's kind of different when, a woman is going into the men's space and a man's going into the woman's space. Um, there's a level of, like, I would say, risk when a man is going into that space, considering that the majority of rapings, essays, and any of those sorts, whether it's men just filming under the stalls or men just putting up cameras, voyeurism essentially. I would say that's entirely different than females going into a men's space. Um, when we talk about the instance of being hypocritical, that's not hypocrisy. If the reason why you're saying, hey, men should not be in our space because of safety, then that's totally fine. Right. And again, when you bring up this situation where you can't tell, like, if a woman is past, I'm sorry, but you can have a very, very masculine woman and a very feminine man, and you can still tell the difference. So it really doesn't make any sense to me.
I have people that will like walk up. I get misgendered sometimes if I'm wearing a bigger shirt because I do have bigger upper area, but like from behind I have short hair, so someone could think I'm a boy, but immediately they realize that I'm a girl because it's obvious.
All right. Are we done with that one?
Like if I'm not able to tell by their appearance, I'm definitely going to be able to tell by their voice.
Based.
Cool. So should the LGBT be taught at schools?
No.
No.
No. Everybody agree on that?
Yeah, I don't see a
Right
reason for
now,
it.
what we're seeing in America is with children reading and math scores being the lowest it's been in decades. Why would school boards or government prioritize or even introduce gender studies? What's the purpose, right? Like, what is the fundamental building blocks that they're going to accomplish from that and take into adulthood?
I will say that when we are evaluating, because we need to evaluate history books altogether, there's been so much taken out, not just LGBTQ, but a lot of Black history, a lot of history that they've decided we didn't need to teach our kids. I mean, you ask a lot of kids right now that are in, elementary school who Martin Luther King Jr. is, and they couldn't tell you. And it's just sad. So, especially with the world we're living in right now. But when reevaluating those books as a whole, I definitely think we should put back in the fact that we existed for years and years and years and years, because people don't think we did because it's not there.
Can I flip the question a little bit? How about how do you feel about a teacher that because you give pushback on a more like woke ideology, a teacher in college kicks a student out of the class for giving pushback to a teacher?
So the teacher, what is the subject the teacher is offering? It's gender studies.
Any, like just like a history 101 or political science or communication, I don't know. Like
I
first year college.
I think we need a little bit more context, but what I'll say is this. I don't think professors should kick out their students if their students are challenging an idea that is being brought to the table for everybody else to learn. That's
Okay,
the
because I mean, I can give you more context. So I was an F1 student, that's international student as a foreigner. I was at Santiago Canyon College, that's a community college in California. And I brought pushback because it was a bit before election year. And I recall that the history teacher brought up, something about, especially with the president that we have now. And I said, really, what's wrong about the president that we have now? And I just kind of tried to open the discussion, and we ended up going into the whole pronouns thing. And I also gave pushback to that. And that teacher pretty much ended up making it very clear in her behavior that she was going to make my life miserable until I dropped her class.
Oh,
I
really?
don't know.
Wow.
I don't know if it's a thing in the US, but in the UK, even in like university, teachers are not allowed to have like put their views on other people. They're allowed to.
They're not allowed either here. They're not supposed
they're
to.
allowed to discuss like separate ideas, but they're not allowed to like insinuate what their views are. Like they're not allowed to. I don't know if it's the same in the US.
Yeah, and I can I haven't been in high school recently and graduating, being 18 and whatnot. We had in our what was it called, PAD class, we had like a Friday forum. So one student researched a topic and then brought it to the table for discussion. We actually had a transgender in sports topic, and basically the teacher would provide factual information and we would all like discuss without the teacher pushing information. He would just give like, hey, this and this happened. You know what I mean?
Right. 1 second, guys. Azare, how old are you, please, for the TikTok?
I'm 20 years old.
Excellent. Thank you. And what are your thoughts on the background?
I can't see that.
Okay. First one, sex is binary. Do you agree or disagree?
Can you explain that a little bit?
There are only two sexes, male and female.
Incorrect. Or sexes? Yes.
No, there's two genders.
Probably not then.
Well, I took a look at your profile. I'm assuming you're non-binary. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
Can you define what non-binary is for us?
For me, at least, it would be just not identifying with what it means to be at least a man or a female. And
So do you request that people use they, them pronouns when they talk about you?
Wait, let him finish the definition.
They use he,
Before
him,
anybody
but
goes any further, the following is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. We don't tolerate any forms of racism, bigotry, or hateful rhetoric. All guests will be expected to maintain respect and decorum, and most importantly, attack the ideas, not the individual. We do not promote or condone any forms of doxing. Sorry. Please continue.
Wait, can you finish the definition before
Sorry.
Josiah continues? Can you finish the definition?
my definition?
Yeah, of non-binary.
I did. That was what it was.
So just to clarify, you said it was not conforming to being like either a man or a woman.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are your pronouns?
I use they. I prefer they them, but that's what it is. It's a preference.
So you don't. So do you believe that using they, them is not proper grammar?
I don't think that's the case.
Because when speaking of they them, you're talking about multiple people and not a specific person.
I'd
I
like
mean,
to
what?
when he's done answering.
I mean, I guess like. Wait, could you say that again?
So would you, when you use they them, you're talking about you use they them when you're talking about multiple people.
Not always.
Not necessarily. I just want to say that's not always the case. You
Do
can
you
use
guys
it.
speak another language other than English?
No, we
Yes,
learned English.
I do, yes.
I really don't think you should be disrespectful to us about that.
It's
What?
plural. I mean, unless you have
Well,
multiple
I-
personalities to address, using they them would be incorrect grammatically.
It's
I
not.
don't know. I just don't.
Maybe used in
That's
singular.
I personally. That's how I just.
Really not correct.
well, no, but just Cyan
Just Josie
is,
is fine.
and Josie is correct. It is singular. The only time in this is it's considered slang. It's still considered slang, but it can be used in a plural sense if you don't know the person, like their sex.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the question is sex binary. So something we've learned is sex and
I don't
gender
think
is
sex is
different.
binary.
Right.
That's like
So,
just what it is under.
Okay, can we attack that because there's so many conversations happening. Let's just stick to one.
yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
go ahead.
Sorry,
Why do you think that sex is not binary?
I trust you'll keep things in order.
You're asking me.
Yeah.
Okay. Sex. I don't think sex is binary. I think gender is fluid.
Okay, yeah, but wait, aren't
If
gender and
that's the
sex
question,
different?
but backwards, I guess.
Wait, aren't gender and sex different?
Gender and sex are different. Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about sex. So why do you think that sex is not binary?
Like there's only two.
That's what binary means, is that there's only two sexes.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
Okay, so it is binary.
Yeah, but I don't believe gender is.
Okay, so why don't you believe gender is binary?
Because I think it's something that's within, and I think that's something that can be expressed externally in any way, in its shape or form.
Wait, but gender expression is entirely different than gender.
Gender expression?
Yes, it's entirely different than gender.
I'm confused on what you're asking.
Yeah, gender expression is different than gender. How you express, it has nothing to do with your gender. Your gender is one thing, and then your gender expression is another.
I kind of always thought them as intertwinable.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Is there one way to dress like a man?
No.
Okay, then you don't believe that gender expression is coincided with gender.
I don't know, honestly.
Now, the answer is it
Wait,
does,
wait.
and you can dress
Wait,
like
wait.
a chick.
Hang on.
and still a dude.
No,
There's
hang
nothing wrong with
on.
that.
Guys, hang
One
on.
time, guys.
He's the only
Hold on.
opposition.
Rue, can I swap you out for Nate if he wants to come up?
Yeah, if Nate requests, drop me down.
Okay. So my problem with your statements is that you said gender is not binary, but then I went down the line of questioning, and then you agree that gender expression is entirely different than gender. So you're not really making sense in your statements.
Well, I've never, again, I don't think gender expression and gender are different things. I think showing gender expression is just the expression of your gender.
Wait, but that's what I'm saying. Is there one way to express your males, you being a man or you being a woman?
No.
Okay, then you would agree that gender expression has nothing to do with the conceptualization of gender.
Let me think about it.
That's fine. I want to thank you, Azari, for engaging with us on that topic. I know that it might be it takes some balls to do that, and I appreciate the exchange.
Okay.
So if that's the case with that, then about the social.
Wait. Hang on. No. He was answering a question of mine. Can we?
Yeah, sorry.
So, okay, rewinding that again. So, gender expression is not the same as gender identity.
Okay, now you're saying gender identity. Which one are you using? Gender identity, gender, or gender expression?
They're the same thing.
They're not the okay. We just established how they're not the same thing. You just said that there's not one way to express yourself as a man. So how are they the same thing?
Okay, so like gender, again, from what my definitions are, gender identity is like who you are and like who you can, like who you are. And then gender expression is just like how you're expressing your identity through like clothes, through mannerisms, through
Okay. Is
through
there
a
one way to
plethora of
express
ways. It's
that
not
gender
just
identity?
clothing.
Okay, is there one way to express that gender identity?
I'm so confused, sorry.
Okay, the reason why you're confused is because you're using these three words interchangeably, which they aren't meant to be used interchangeably. They're meant to point to specific things amongst the construct of what what gender is. First of all, gender identity doesn't even exist. It's just this idea that you can just call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Okay, gender expression just establishes what you are expressing yourself as a man or a woman, right? And you just agree that there's not one way
So
to
you're
express
saying
yourself as a man or a woman. So these things would
just to
not be.
make sure just to make sure though, you're arguing on the opposition that there isn't more than two.
Yes.
Okay. And then to be fair, I don't know. I use personally non-binary and trans interchangeably. So like I don't really like I don't know.
Wait, what do you mean you don't know? Why are you moving on? Why are you pivoting the conversation? We're not talking
I'm not
about.
trying to pivot the conversation.
Okay, well, non-binary isn't trans, respectfully. Like, I don't. What
Well,
is
I
what is
mean,
a trans person?
a trans person is just like somebody, I mean, in I don't know. From what I've learned, I don't know. I've learned from multiple like I've talked to professors about it, like and
Well,
all that.
I'm glad.
So,
I've talked to doctors and I've won, so I don't.
yeah, I don't know. I've
Is a
just
person who transitions
we've
from
had
one gender to the other.
Wait,
Transition.
let him answer. Wait, can we let him answer? Like, this question's
Okay,
not
I'm
gonna.
gonna have to go, but thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you for coming
and
up.
he's
I want
joining
him to
in.
answer. Goodness, I don't know why she's giving answers when I'm talking to the opposition.
Go ahead, Amani.
Do you have an answer to any of the questions that I asked you?
I mean, I don't I've given the best answers I could.
Well, what would you
Okay.
what would
Okay.
you
I'm gonna let Amir go because I don't know. I don't know what this person's talking about. There's no clarity at all. I
like
don't.
so you're making the claim, right? I don't know how to say your name, but you're making the claim that there's more than two genders, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there's probably. I think there's like three, if I'm being honest.
Well, what would the third gender be?
Just gender non-conforming, non-binary. Like people who fall outside, just man or female.
So what would you define gender? Like if you had to put a definition for the word gender, just the word gender, what would that be?
Again, like something personal, like it's what you and how you express yourself.
So basically any which way you express yourself could be considered gender is what you're saying?
No, it's how you express yourself through your mannerisms, through like
Let me ask you a question regarding that. Do you tend to see your expression on a spectrum between femininity and masculinity?
yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, where do you align yourself sexually?
Like my sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I fall under just liking men.
You like men?
Yeah.
Are you male, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, my sex is male.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question.
Anyway, are you good? So, first and foremost, so you're saying basically that the definition of gender for you is that it's just expressing. So basically any way you express yourself could be considered gender, your mannerisms, all that, but then that wouldn't be coherent, right? Because gender is based off sex, right? You know, the terms boy, girl, man, woman, whatever, those would be technically considered genders, but you wouldn't have those terms without sex. I don't understand how being non-conforming or whatever you're saying in terms of sex-based stereotypes would be considered a third gender or a third sex.
Like, I don't know.
It just means you're not adhering to stereotypes.
Sorry, Azari, you said you were 21?
I'm 20, but yeah.
20? Okay, well listen, dude, you're young, right? You're starting your early adulthood. This is all part of the exploration process about learning about who you are. I think for the most part, homosexual men tend not to find themselves on the predominantly masculine spectrum. Don't get me wrong, there are quite predominantly masculine gay men out there. But when we observe them through psychology, we tend
I don't
to
think
see...
that's the case though for me. Like, I think, like, genuinely, sorry to interrupt you. I know you're gonna go on a tangent or something.
You're good, go ahead.
I just, like, if I were to literally be like I think if I had my brain scanned, I'd probably have like a female brain or something. Like, I think genuinely, like,
okay, so what let's break that down for a second. What do you think a female brain is? Where do you think that, what part of the brain...
been affected by female hormones, then...
Males also produce estrogen, and there are some males who produce above average levels of estrogen. And so you're right, there is a physiological effect associated to that. But as it stems from like the brain neural structure, it doesn't really. They have observed certain areas of the brain comparing homosexual men to what they would refer to in the medical field as cisgender women. And what they noticed is that the portion of the hypothalamus in size, in volume, is comparable, but not the cisgendered males, the heterosexual males, their hypothalamus or portions of it in volume were greater in size. So that's where the comparison is. If you're saying that you believe that regions of your hypothalamus are smaller than the average males, and that is what causes or stimulates you to express your gender in a non-societal conforming way, I would say perhaps explore more your sexuality, and then you may find your identity more through your sexuality.
In what ways do you mean by that? I'm just curious.
I mean, I'm not sure where you are on the journey of identifying what your identity is. There are some males who know innately that they will be labor workers. They will work with their hands. They will be construction workers. Others will use their brain as their tool. And either become some form of engineers or doctors or lawyers. They typically go after predominantly
So
male...
you're telling me to go get like a bachelor's degree and maybe my gender
No, I'm just trying to make a comparison in what the typical form of masculinity is, right? And I'm not saying that you should conform to any of that, because you need to figure out where you stand with your own identity. And because your expression goes between masculinity and femininity, I believe that through the exploration of your sexuality, you should be able to find some centering ground when you express with other peers like you who also demonstrate the same form of expression, making you feel comfortable in that community, so to speak. I'm not trying to take away from how you feel about your identity by any means necessary, but simply trying to enlighten you that, along your journey, there are multiple paths in which you can explore. And I am just pointing you in a direction that might aid you in finding comfort in where your identity is. Does that make any sense? It might not.
No, not really, if I'm being honest.
Does anyone else want to take a stab at it?
Hello?
I mean, it
Hello?
was just.
I would, please. Oh, go ahead, Avani.
I was gonna say it just doesn't exist. There's no
One
such
second.
thing as a lady brain.
Shadow, can I get your age for the TikTok, please?
Hey, can you hear me or is my shit bugging out?
No, I can hear you. What's your age?
My age?
Yep.
I'm 22.
Excellent. Give me 1 second. I'll do
Was
it
any...
quick.
Oh, all right.
All right, Avani, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, just simply put, because no other explanation is going to work. Lady brain doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. There's been no factual evidence to prove this. They've never done amniocentesis, which will test the amniotic fluid during embryonic development to see whether or not there is a masculinization or feminization of the brain. The majority of a brain actually develops postnatally, so this wouldn't even make any sense. And the thalamus doesn't become sexually dimorphic until adulthood. So
W,
Oh, I
Avani.
didn't realize there
W.
was an actual thing called. I thought that they were just saying like a woman's brain isn't different than a man's brain when it definitely it is.
That's the thing. Like, well, it is, but humans are so incredibly diverse and different that it's not enough to be able to influence your gender, which is why that is ultimately a decision.
It is.
Regardless, Western society biased facts that were only facts in the last 10 years that probably won't be facts in the next 10 years. And like that thing you were talking about, like the hypothermos or whatever, that's just not true. Like you can have, like I said, bias studies influenced by Western culture, like all day. But if you really get down into it, like I could have a small hypothermos or whatever. I could have like mine could be like 2%, but I'm still gonna identify as a cisgender male. And like I know plenty of men with like tons of feminine qualities. And I guess you could say that their brain is more feminine, but that doesn't make them another gender. It just makes them them. They are who they were. And anything else, like I don't like that. I think people want validation is what it is. I think it's a self-identity crisis, and I think that they want validation through
I really
feeling
want to
valid.
chime
Like
in here.
I need
I don't
validation.
know.
Like oh no, no one's validating me. Like wait, since when the fuck is no one validates me to brush my teeth, wipe my ass, and go to work? Like let's be real here, dude. Like you're
Rawr
either born
for my
male or
tiny
female. And
dog.
that's just the way I see it.
I
Jules,
really want to chime
And if you
in here.
disagree, you're
before
not
I
validating my
leave,
opinion.
hold on.
So
I do
before
want to
you
hold on, Azari. If you don't mind sticking around
can
and
you
hanging
just
around for a bit, I do want to open it up to Jules. They've been patiently waiting. Jules, thank you for waiting. What are your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to brain scans, okay, I came out as trans at the age of 45. It's always been an up and down thing for me. Like, I've always wondered what the hell is wrong with me, and I would bury it in the closet. I have MS. I have a cyst on my brain, and I have been going to a neurologist for many, many years, having MRIs for many, many years. And when I made the decision to come out and go through the process of transitioning, I asked my neurologist, I said, what the hell is wrong with me? Please find something on my brain that can explain this. And unfortunately, she couldn't. So it does, I mean, yeah, the hypothalamus is smaller in a lot of trans people and whatever, but that's not solid proof.
I don't know. I'm still on the fence
That's what.
about.
Oh, my bad.
I mean, I went to, I mean, I went to a neurologist before I transitioned because I really felt like something was wrong with my brain. And I mean, who's to say? Maybe there is. I mean, I do have a cyst on my brain. I do have multiple sclerosis. So maybe that's a factor. But I didn't have multiple sclerosis when I was 6 years old. I had a cyst. It was there then. Um, so there's I think there is probably one day we will find out there is something genetic that goes on in trans people, but unfortunately the brain is not, hard evidence.
Oh, so we all agree.
Rar for my
Nice.
tiny tinies.
I think that like I don't know what I could say on TikTok, so I'll just say like people who like the same gender, I think that that isn't a choice. But I think that T people, I think that that is a choice though. I
It
think
it
that your
Mhm.
sexual orientation is not a choice, but what you choose to be sexually or like as your sex is a choice.
let's face it. I mean, I made the choice to transition. I mean, you're absolutely right. It
Oh,
is a
so we're on the
choice.
same page.
It
Nice.
it well, it is a choice, but
I would just
gender.
wait.
Well, hold on. Jules? What was the motivation behind the transition, if you don't mind me asking? And you don't have to answer anything that you're not comfortable answering.
I mean, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for me to answer it because it's something that I mean, I'm a child of the 80s, right? So I put on a dress as a child and waited for my mom to come home. And my mom came home and I said, Mom, you have a daughter. And I got in a lot of trouble for that. So I buried that away for life. I mean, and it was always there. Um, but I learned how to just bury it away. And I guess what pushed me over the edge was physically. From depression, I slept for probably 10 years most every day. I slept days and days and days and days. And I don't know the straw that broke the camel's back, but I just woke up one day and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore and I'm going to be who I am. But for me, I'm a very scientific person and I wanted to know why, and I still don't have those answers. And
That
my
doesn't
God,
sound like much of
if
a
I if
choice.
if I told this to my if I had this conversation with the trans community, I would be shunned. I would be
You're
shunned.
not going to
Yeah,
be
it's
you're
like
not going
it's
to be
like you're
picked on
it's like
here.
you're
One second,
smart.
Shadow. 1 second. You're not going to be picked on here, Jules. But I appreciate you sharing and being open. So we'll treat you with respect in return. If you don't mind me asking, what was intimacy like for you as a teenager, into adulthood? Did you have healthy forms of intimacy with either same or opposite or a combination of either sex?
I considered myself, during my young adulthood and into my adulthood, I considered myself straight. I've been married twice. Intimacy was something that was kind of difficult for me, but it was difficult more on a physical, like for me, physical. Like I did not like to be seen. I like the lights to be out. And also, and I mean, I know this sounds cheesy, but during intimacy, sometimes I would get mixed up on who's feeling what. Um, it
Wait, sorry. What do you mean by that? What
well, I mean,
role
it's
are you
kind of like
fulfilling in that moment? Is that what
maybe
you're?
maybe I was living vicariously through my partner, which I mean, with that said, it was a very loving thing. I wasn't someone, intimacy meant and still means a lot to me. But it's, I wasn't your typical guy, I mean, and the women that I was with, they would say those things. I didn't watch Corn. I didn't learn how to have intimacy from that influence. It was more a very emotional thing for me. There had to be love. There had to be some sort of emotion. And like now, since I've transitioned, like that is something that I mean I'm even more picky about.
So you still desire to have a romantic relationship with females, correct?
Um, well, that's a tough one. I don't think so. Um, I think I think I don't really know. I'm so detached from the dating scene now. It doesn't really.
May I ask you if you are willing, and again, you don't have to do anything or answer any questions whatsoever. But if I could ask you to reflect and ask yourself, was there ever a desire to incorporate the feminine type clothing into the aspects of intimacy within your relationships?
Never, never. I would have never thought of doing that. I mean, intimacy is not about clothing to me. It's not about. I mean, to me, in such. I don't know. I can't put it into words, but no.
Okay.
I was
So
very vanilla.
behaviorally, though, like when you say that intimacy, I think I'm going to paraphrase here, but correct me if I'm wrong. For you, intimacy was confusing because you didn't know which role to assimilate to in the limit of intimacy. Am I accurately
You're close.
encapsulating that?
You're close. I knew what role I knew what role I was playing, but I felt somewhat detached from that masculine role. I felt I wasn't like, I mean, all of my life I've looked at men just in life and I'm like, I'm not that. I don't understand why, but I'm not that. And I mean, even in intimacy, it wasn't about genitalia. It wasn't about any of that. It was about the emotional, just the emotional experience behind it. I was very unmasculine, but I wasn't necessarily feminine either. I was just not your typical male.
Right. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties because TikTok keeps kicking me out of the app and then back into it. Could you just repeat? Okay, so I had asked, I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself, so I'm sorry, Jules. I had asked whether there was some confusion within intimacy regarding assimilating to a particular role. I think what you were saying was no, it's more an emotional based thing.
Yeah, I mean, I knew my role, and I mean, and I'm married. We're separated not because of this. She's very supportive, but I know I'm not confused in that role. I guess what I'm saying is let's say I'm hanging out with the guys, you know, before I transitioned. I mean, they would talk about intimacy in such a way that I just couldn't relate to. And I felt much more, and I hate putting a label on it, but I felt much more feminine in my sexuality, not physically, emotionally, if that makes sense.
So, okay, let's see if we can describe that in a way that has a little bit more meaning to it. Like, are you saying that your approach to intimacy is more of a delicate manner? You prefer to make love than to have animalistic forms of intimacy? I don't know.
Well, that's. I mean, you know, when you know your partner, you definitely experiment with those things. I mean, but yes, I mean, in order for me to feel comfortable enough to have that level of intimacy, yeah, I was very emotionally involved. I mean, yes, I've had one night stands, but they never felt right. They never. It felt like I was just going through that male motion to try to try to ease my excessive flow of testosterone, you know. But overall, yeah, my approach was, we would be sitting in a restaurant with one of my friends. I'd be sitting in a restaurant, and he would like check out the body on that girl. I would be like, "Wow, listen to her voice. Look at her eyes." You know, those are the things that stood out to me. It's just a different. It was just different for me always. And that wasn't the pivotal moment where I realized that I was trans by any means. I mean, I think I'm not one to put gender in a box. I think, I just don't do that. There shouldn't really be rules on what makes someone trans, what makes someone not trans, what makes someone gay or hetero. I mean, I think, to one of your questions, I do think, gender is fluid in a way, in a sense. But anyway, sorry.
No worries. My next question is, with regards to the way that you selected your partners, was there any element of their anatomical features that you ultimately desired, or
Absolutely. That's really cool that you asked that question. Me and my ex, we were talking, or I'll still call her my wife. Me and my wife, we were talking, and I've always been more attracted to a more of a masculine type woman, which I find very interesting that you asked me that question. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a track record with me dating women who took the role, who took control, if that makes sense.
yeah, no, it really does. My next question is, it's a sensitive one, so please don't feel obliged to answer. All right, if you don't want to, just when I'm not comfortable, and we'll walk away from it. Were there any elements of you fantasizing about being your partner in those moments?
Fantasizing, you mean in a way that
Did you need to, in some way or form, visualize either elements of yourself being your partner
no,
in order to be aroused?
no.
Okay.
No, it's this is something that and this is one of those things where, you know, I was really confused when I went to my neurologist and asked her what is wrong with me, because it wasn't about sex. It wasn't about being aroused. It was just something, you know, I don't have an answer for why we are trans. I don't have an answer for gender dysphoria. I just don't. I don't believe a lot of the things that, you know, we're being told, you know, but no, it wasn't about arousal. And actually even now I'm probably more masculine in that setting. Still, I mean, it's not about arousal to me.
Do you feel as though there's like a battle between your personalities, where there are times where you are comfortable in the masculine setting or masculine role, but
When
there's
when I
ultimately
was
times that you desire to play a more feminine role?
Yes, at first when I was listening to everyone in the trans community, I felt like I had to be super feminine. I just started estrogen. I felt like that's the only way I'm going to be accepted in this community, because I mean, like I said, I've always felt shunned. But now I'm very comfortable in my masculinity. Yes, I identify as a trans female, but at the same time, I'm very comfortable in my masculinity. I don't play into the misogyny of it all. I have no problem going to the grocery store in a t-shirt, you know, I mean, no makeup on. Sometimes I'll go and I might have a little bit of stubble, you know, I hope not. I try not to, but at the same time, yeah, my masculinity is something that I'm very proud of, actually. I mean, it's something that I'm not willing to let go of.
May I ask where you are in your transition? Have you simply socially transitioned? Are there any forms of medical transition or therapy or surgery for that matter?
Well, right now I'm just, you know, I guess any medical transitioning is hormones. I had scheduled a surgery for bottom surgery the first year into my transition, and again, I mean, sometimes we're led astray in this community. We really are. And I had a very dear friend have that surgery, and the hell that she went through, and the fact that, you know, I'm still married. I rethought that, and I mean, I'm very content where I am right now. I'm in the process of legally changing my name, but I have no desire to have any sort of surgery. I thought about facial feminization. That is a struggle for me, but at the same time, I am who I am, and I'm comfortable with who I am, and you know, that's that's where I am at this point.
All right, excellent. Thank you. In terms of like sexuality, I'm trying to explore because the other day I hosted a live calling out a trans creator for making the statement that trans women can be lesbians. And so, Jules, I'm going to ask you what your view is on that position, or what your.
I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, one thing that I cannot stand about some of these trans creators that you're speaking of is they're using being trans as shock value. And when it comes to, I cannot refer to myself, even though I feel like I predominantly am attracted to women, I cannot refer to myself as a lesbian. I cannot refer to myself as straight either. And you know, I've heard a couple of people use the term transbian, and I think that's almost fair. I think, you know, I think invading lesbian spaces as a trans woman, for me, only me, and I don't mean any harm to anyone else in the trans community, but for me, it does not feel right. I do not. I remember just recently women choosing the bear over men, and I realized that some women may see me as or see the male sex that I was, you know, born with, and I'm respectful to that. So no, I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
Um, Is there any form of attraction to the idea of yourself being the opposite sex or gender? Is there
No.
a component like and I don't mean like this fallaciously, all right? And I don't want you to feel as though like I'm coming here with like a bad intention. Perhaps I'm not doing the greatest job of asking these questions because, to be quite honest with you, I've only recently started to um, read about a particular subject and that I will share with you at the end. That might help you to better understand yourself from that perspective. Um, so when I say that, I don't mean like it has to be this thing where you are ultimately aroused or walking around euphoric with the idea of yourself being the opposite sex. But is there when you are not exhibiting, but when you are expressing yourself, do you express yourself in a way that is like your ideal woman, like the partners that you seek?
I'm so happy you're asking this question because I mean this is how I feel. There is no amount of clothing that's going to change the fact that I'm a trans woman. There is makeup doesn't change the fact on if I'm a trans woman or not. It's all internal for me. There are no physical aspects that I don't look at myself in the mirror and say, "Ooh, I'm a good-looking woman." That's not where I am right now. Do I like putting on makeup? Absolutely. I mean, of course, but at the same time, it doesn't. I that has no basis for me. It's not about the physical aspect of everything, and that's probably why I'm not rushing out to have surgery because to me, it's all internal.
If someone told you that by having the surgery, it will ultimately impact the intimacy that you have, like, is it safe to assume, Jules, that you are content in that department of romance and intimacy?
I think I'm content as much as I can be. I mean, being a trans woman, I know romance and intimacy is going to be kind of hard for me to find. Um, but I was going to say something. Uh, I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, I'm content. I'm content with who I am. And I've never felt like that before. Like again, I mean, I was a professional musician before I transitioned, and I mean, I had a good life, and I mean, you know, and I had children, which I'm so thankful. I'm even thankful that, you know, my mom got on to me for dressing in girls' clothes when I was a kid because I wouldn't have had those experiences, you know, as a father. I mean, that is one of the greatest accomplishments I've ever had. Um, you know, I've struggled with a lot of this I've struggled with what the community tells me I need to think. Honestly, truly. And I think the only reason I ever wanted to have any sort of surgery is I don't ever, and this has upset me. Early on in my transition, I walked into a woman's bathroom and it made the women in there uncomfortable. And instead of feeling entitled or blaming them, it was a reality check for me. It was, I'm making women uncomfortable in their spaces. So, those are the only reasons why I even think about facial feminization surgery, is because I don't want to make, women uncomfortable. I just don't. It's not in my nature.
Mhm.
I hope I answered the question.
Yes, I really appreciate you being very open with me and answering these questions. I'm going to ask another question, and again, it might come off as a bit shocking because the term itself has been weaponized and polarized. But I just want to know if you are aware or familiar with the term. And the term itself is autogynephilia, or the acronym is AGP.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that term. I mean, that is one of the things that I researched. I researched before I transitioned, and I knew what questions to ask my neurologist. I knew what questions to ask my therapist, because I mean, that is, I think, the only difference, in my opinion, and I mean, this is my opinion, it's not a turn on for me. This is not a turn on for me. If anything, it's a struggle. It's not, at times. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not always a struggle, but yeah, I'm very familiar with that. And it's a very, for someone in the trans community who is not comfortable with who they are, they're very offended, I'm sure, when you mention that.
Or they have a very they reject the term altogether. If you are well read on it, and I suspect that you are, simply because of what I've gained today, you understand, by not only the researchers but also the self-identified ones who are published authors, and who are advocates for furthering the research. They get ostracized, by the TRAs, right? And it makes it very, very difficult for professionals to be able to identify it or even have the means to diagnose it. We know that it exists, right? Because it is in the diagnostic textbooks of the DSM-5.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was, even when you look up in the standards today of gender affirming care, right, which most countries follow the WPATH standards. If you look within the WPATH standards, there's absolutely nothing that speaks to autogynephilia. Phil Illey is the author that I was going to recommend, but I suspect that you may have already heard of him, or are you familiar with his literature?
I mean, I'm not familiar with the author, but again, I mean, I could not understand, like, when I first said out loud to myself, "Oh my God, I think I'm trans." It felt like, in my own self-hatred, I guess you could say, it felt like it was a perversion. And please forgive me for saying that, but that's what it felt like. But I wasn't aroused, so that didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to me that it was a very confusing time for me, and I waited until I was 45 for that reason.
There was ultimately
damn, you 45?
That's when I started, yes.
Would you say that there was ultimately a desire to emulate, right?
No.
Because I think that with Blanchard's work, Phil Illey really does a good job of maybe filling some gaps, in that perhaps there is also an element that is outside of arousal and euphoria, but it is simply desire. Um, One particular subject that I spoke to, their they exhibited transvestic behaviors where they wanted or desired, it was a deep, persistent and consistent desire to wearing particular clothing. For others, it was to be regarded as a woman in society, and so they would emulate their mannerisms. um, in other instances, it would be anatomical in nature, where they desired to possess certain features. And I'm sure you're familiar
Yeah,
with all of this, George.
I'm familiar with that, and again, maybe I'm different. Maybe I'm different because again, it's not about physical to me. I mean, it is now, of course. I mean, I think in time, it has become, somewhat more of, I'm presenting physically, but again, I mean, maybe I'm different because no, I don't.
You know what, Jules? Here's the thing. I believe, especially you and I are from the same generation. I'm an '80s baby as well, and I grew up in the era where a lot of closeted men and women still maintained social heterosexual relationships as to not be ostracized by society. But then when society turned around and said, well, no, we're embracing of this idea. It doesn't matter anymore, whether a male wants to be with a male or a female wants to be with a female. And if they want to express their love in the form of marriage, by all means, they should do so. And if they are law-abiding citizens and they're taxpayers and they're responsible individuals and they qualify for the requirements of, adopting a child and raising a family, by all means, they should be able to do that. That's when these men and women, these closeted men and women, were finally like, I can breathe, because they've suppressed their entire adult life conforming to a societal standard, which did not fit with them. So
Man, y'all are gay as fuck, bro. What the fuck?
The very first thing I looked up when my family got internet in 2000 was, I'm not going to use the actual word, but was the change operation. That's the very first thing I looked up in 2000, and it again, it was something. I feel like I came out. Yes, I came out because it was more acceptable in society. Of course, I mean, I probably would have carried this to my grave had it not. But it was always there. It was always there for me. And oddly, which is kind of another odd thing, and I'm not diagnosed XXY or anything like that, but at the age of 13, I started to develop breast buds.
So yeah, gynecomastia.
Yes. And I mean, I'm not XXY, but this is one of those things that I sometimes wonder, okay, is there something genetically going on here? I don't think that's the case with a lot of people in my community, but I think
Quick question for you, Jules. How old were you, and what did you do to remedy it? Did you grow it out, or did you elect to have a surgery?
I went to my mother because they hurt, and there were like little knots underneath. And I mean, the best to my recollection is the doctor handed me this tube to rub on them. And I mean, I was a kid, so I didn't really look at what it was, but I mean, I'm going to assume that it was testosterone. And that seemed to kind of push me over an edge during my adolescence. I mean, I was having crazy dreams, and I was having crazy, like, I never dreamed that I was male in my dreams as, in my adolescence. As I got to adulthood, I did. I mean, it was more just kind of random, but I don't know. I'm very respectful to trans people, and I hope I'm not coming across as disrespectful, but I do think that we need to open up these conversations because I think it's very important, and it helps. I mean, listening to you for the past 2 nights, I mean, it's helping me understand.
Well, I appreciate you very, very much, Jules, for doing what you're doing. It's not easy having these conversations. A lot of, or some of the individuals that are on the panel who are more right-leaning in their, or more conservative in their views, who are in the transsexual community, oftentimes get ostracized by the left.
I roar for my tiny tinies.
Sorry, I got to do that every once in a while, Jules.
And I'm actually considered. See, I'm a southern liberal. So I mean, we're from Generation X, so we're a little bit different. You know, I would probably be considered conservative by most of my community because I mean, you know, I'm not so easy to be easily offended. And I understand where people are coming from. I understand why people don't understand me and why people may be, you know, apprehensive of understanding. You know, I mean, I guess I'm more open-minded than most of these people who say they're open-minded.
I roar for my tiny tinies.
The next question I want to ask you, because most of the people that I've spoken to privately about this, and I have to admit, you have a lot of courage to speak openly about this in front of a couple hundred people. And so I really do thank you, because I feel as though conversations like this do somewhat break certain stigmas, but they also add an element of humanization to these particular conditions. And because these conditions are being observed, but they're understudied, if more and more people can talk about it openly, hopefully the medical community will be more inclined to studying it. Because the reality is that there are gender clinics, more and more of them, that are coming out, and they have a plethora of data that researchers are just waiting to get their hands on. But ultimately, it comes down to funding. And so when you have global corporations and governments who are colluding with one another to push a particular narrative or ideology, and they will do everything in their power to safeguard that ideology and the voice that they are projecting. And they'll safeguard it from anything that would give it a bad light, right? Because for the most part, when we mention autogynephilia, because of the way that it's been discussed and the way that it's been attacked, there is a connotation that these individuals are morbidly sick, you know, and perverse when walking around. And I myself am guilty of having expressed that, Jules, earlier on. But my stance on it is changing. The more that I am becoming knowledgeable about it, the more that I am, going to places where people are speaking openly about it and getting a better understanding, and being given opportunities to speak with individuals about it as well, because I don't think it's very cut and dry, like most people would say it is, right? Like, some will take the position of asking one or two questions and ultimately decide whether or not, and pass judgment and say, well, yeah, you're an AGP because of those two things. I think it's more nuanced than that. But
Absolutely. I have a very bitter taste when it comes to the medical world. When it comes to my own experience. My own experience was, okay, I established that I'm transgender. I go to a psychologist. That psychologist basically tells me anyone in my family that doesn't support me, shun them, push them away, that was really bad. And then the gender doctor pumped me so full of estrogen, like it made me literally, I mean, I felt an overwhelming euphoric effect. And so what comes up must go down. And I remember, like, I was being overdosed on estrogen. Like I think the levels, I can't remember the exact levels, but I think it was like between 1 and 200. My levels were 900 constantly.
Wow.
And I felt so much. I mean, I shunned everybody away like my therapist told me to. So I was alone, and I just suddenly stopped taking estrogen completely. And it's like I felt like everyone, like my doctor, my therapist, they weren't listening to me. They weren't hearing me. It was like, and that's another thing that I see in my community is these people bragging about producing breast milk. Odds are they're on a really high level, and I'm like, that's nothing to brag about. That's all that is for shock value. And this is a very personal journey for me, so I'm terrified doing this right now, by the way. I am absolutely terrified, but I feel like I'm so sick and tired of people misrepresenting me. I feel like I needed to speak to someone. I mean, you guys are 100% rational in your thinking, and you're very respectful. I don't agree with everything that you're saying, but that's life, and I respect you.
We can disagree and have disagreements, but I'm pretty sure there are far more other things that we'll align on or have in common for sure. I guess my last question before I just try and get it back to the conversation and the topic at hand. Some of the people that I've spoken to really don't resonate with the typical transgender experience in that they were extremely dysphoric, or they knew from a very, very young age, and then they were extremely dysphoric around puberty, and ultimately had to seek some form of transition. The people that I had spoken with didn't really express any form of dysphoria. There were elements of depression, there were elements of shame and suppression of emotion. But do you feel as though that the way that the transgender experience is portrayed through the ideology, did that resonate with you? Or did you say, well, there's some things that do, but ultimately not everything really resonates with me?
Well, definitely not everything resonates with me. I mean, definitely. And when it comes to this wave of transgenderism, you're old enough to remember when ADHD was like the big thing, and all of these doctors were prescribing Ritalin and all these medications, and that's what it feels like to me. That's what it feels like to me now. But again, as someone who was 6 years old, I couldn't make sense of anything. The term gender dysphoria didn't exist. I couldn't make sense of any of my life up until I did hear that term, and I mean, and that was such a revelation for me. That was the lifesaver, because I experienced dysphoria in I mean, I've always had long hair, and when I played music in the 90s, I was, which in the 90s, you could get away with it, but I was wearing dresses on stage, and that's when I felt my confidence. That's when I felt confident in my inner femininity. I don't know, I was raised by a feminist. That may be playing a role in why I'm the way that I am. But I think I hear a lot of the same stories. Well, I did this as a child. I said that I was a girl as a child. And I think that is a narrative that a lot of trans people feel like they have to follow, which is unfortunate, because it makes us less honest with ourselves. I think that it takes a lot of exploration, and unfortunately, like I said, I'm so happy that I grew up in the 80s, because had I not, my mom would have given me testosterone blockers, and I would have never experienced the life that I experienced with children. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I didn't grow up in the time that we are in right now.
Excellent. Well, Jules, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I continue to do a lot of research on this particular topic. Are you familiar with Discord, Jules?
Not really.
Okay. Well, look, there's an author. I've said his name before. His name is Phil, Phil, and his last name is Illy, Illy. And he has a book called Autoheterosexual, Being Attracted to the Opposite Sex. And I think that maybe there's some things that you might take away from that book, and maybe it might provide some additional clarity in terms of your exploration with yourself and identity. So I recommend it. The reason why I recommended my Discord is because it's free and it's available there, but there are other forums where you can get it. Actually, Phil even told me I could pirate it, so I'm sure he'd be fine with you pirating it as well. But Jules, I'm going to drop you for now. I really do sincerely appreciate you stopping by and having this conversation. And of course, if there's any time you'd like to connect and discuss particular theories or ideas, please feel free to reach out to me.
All right, and likewise, if ever you have a question, I mean, you feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I've given you a follow.
All right, thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that was interesting. W Jules in the chat, please, for entertaining those questions for that long. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was definitely a learning experience, hopefully for them as well. Coco, I don't know if you're around. Thank you for joining. How are you?
I'm well. Do I have crazy audio? Usually I do.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I
you're
kind
good.
of jumped into the tail end of that, so.
Yeah, Chloe's like, I truly am the AGP whisperer. Come on, guys. Come on. Don't make me. That was such a great conversation. Come on. That was really, really great. But Coco, we all know your thoughts on the background. I'm sorry you can't see the first two, but the first one is sex binary, or trans women, and then you can read the rest. So why don't you have at it?
Oh my gosh, I just feel like I'm just like.
You know, your regular spiel. You know it. We got to hear it. I got to clip it so I can press a button like this.
Oh Jesus!
For my tiny thing.
I think you guys already know. I don't think that men can be women. I definitely reject the gender ideology. I was really interested with the guests that you just had up recently, which is why I came up. I really wanted to get some insight with where they're coming from, and I think that it was really great that at least they were socially aware, which I keep saying that, Raw, to you, that like trans people do need to start being more socially aware. And even though I disagree with probably a lot of their talking points, at least I understand that this individual has grasped some type of like common sense when it comes to women's spaces. And I think that is what we're just asking for. But yeah, it's sex binary. Male, female, man, woman. Are trans women? Of course they are. Just kidding. Should trans women have access to female-only spaces? Should trans women have access? No, they should not. Should LGBT be taught K through 12? No. And should children have access to gender-affirming care? Well, we'd have to prove whether or not trans children exist, and they don't. So,
Base.
Bravo.
I don't know.
Naya, thank you for joining. Thanks, Coco. Naya, thank you for joining.
Was I in this live earlier or not? I can't remember.
Yes, you were.
Oh, never mind.
You still want to be back in here?
No.
Oh, damn. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up. So, Naya, first I'm going to come to you and say thank you for joining and being so patient. Please share your thoughts on the background.
One second. Off. It was going off for a second, but yeah, I'm pretty similar to Coco. I think I would probably agree with everything that she said. I do think that sex is binary. I think that trans women are trans women, not women. And I think that females deserve to have their own sex segregated spaces away from biological males. I feel like teaching LGBT in school would just cause more confusion for kids, so I don't agree with that either. And then I don't believe that children have the mental capacity to make a decision that could potentially sterilize them. So
beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. I've glitched again on this live, and unfortunately my face isn't showing. So you won't see it until I drop everybody from the panel. But tonight I am going to finish again with another song and me wiggling in my chair for y'all and roaring for Tiny Dinies. But I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to give their final thoughts either on the conversation that we just had or the topic overall. And Avani, we're going to start with you. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and getting together and trying to put this together. We will follow up. 1 second.
I roar for my tiny tinies.
We will follow up with Jess Buck, and hopefully they're okay. But I would love to reschedule this debate because we do have a lot of great questions and a lot of great debate points to get through in that debate. But I also want to make an announcement, Avani, if it's all right with you, about our collaboration on another project. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, so Avani and I, and Avani's already been speaking about it, and by all means, they have the right to, and I think they should. I'm a little bit slower because I want to do things a little bit more calculated, and I had things on the docket already. But we're going to be actively going after a content creator for certain things, such as allowing minors in their private Discord and allowing self-identified P3DOs in the Discord. And when certain requests were made to make the Discord age restricted and to remove those problematic individuals, both the P3DOs and the children, they refused to do so. Their name is Planet_Peterson. They're a debater with 300,000 followers. This is going to be quite the feat because they do have quite the following. And they all seem to be a bunch of guppies that will do anything that they say. But this is a good fight that we're going to be fighting. And I'm also going to be doing a call out live perhaps this weekend or early next week. But Avani will definitely be there, and we're going to collaborate to share all the screenshots, all the receipts that we have, and break it down for you chronologically. And then hopefully we can get a team together to report this through the legal system, or at least crimes against internet crimes against children. Avani, I don't know if you've already taken any steps. Do you want to chime in and talk about what you have already done or in the works of doing?
So right now I'm in the works of actually talking with several agencies. One of them being the FBI, the other one being the Internet Crime Police. So there's a specific way that you need to do things. And the problem is identifying whether or not they will be able to get arrested based on the evidence that is provided. Unfortunately, we are gonna have to have a lot of the undoctored photos. But I mean doctored, I mean like they've covered up the age of the children, they covered up the faces. We're gonna need a lot of that uncovered in order to submit it, so they are able to start or initiate a case against individuals. So it's just one of those things where we're gonna have to keep it tight knit. But that's essentially where I've gotten. I'm just waiting for everything to come in and for everything to be in chronological order for us to be able to create a big file to send over to the police.
Yeah, and the reality is that this particular individual is not only a debater on TikTok, but they're a high school professor. And they are an author. They're very easy to find on other platforms of social media, and they've quite frankly doxed themselves in their own book by giving out their full name and the actual school that they teach at. So I think it's very problematic when people refuse to remove P3DOs and children from their server and give a reason that they want to preserve free speech. I don't think free speech should be given to children, and nor should it be given to P3DOs. I sincerely think that individuals like that need to be called out. People need to be aware of it. Parents need to be aware of it so that they know not to allow their children to be exposed by somebody who makes questionable decisions by subjecting their children to harmful predators, open predators, and then they also reiterate some sexual form of communication amongst one another, and that is just grotesque to me. So it needs to be called out. They need to be removed from the platform, and we're going to do everything in our power to do so. So Avani, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for joining. And we're going to get together and schedule a specific date, and then we'll market it through our platforms and let everybody know.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to drop you now so I can do my little dance later. But stick around or go into another live and fight the good fight, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Take care. Liz Talk, thank you so much for hanging around and sticking around through all that. What were your thoughts on the live this evening and or the topic at hand?
Sex is not binary, and we only got two, and trans women are not the same thing as I am. Let's see. And the only thing I disagreed with was, I do believe in letting kids wear whatever they want, and if the pronouns for me thing isn't harmful, I'm completely against any hormones or surgery or anything like that. But I'm cool with the kid running around just trying to discover themselves at the end of the day, as long as they're doing it appropriately. The whole animal thing is too far. There's obviously boundaries and things like that, but yeah, you get my drift. And yeah, no to the school, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you for letting me up here, and make sure you follow my backup, because I haven't been able to message on this one in over a long time, and I'm trying to build up my other backup account that I used to have got taken down. I had a lot of followers, so I want to build another one so I can start getting in contact with everybody more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining Liz Talk. I'll make sure to give that backup account a follow, and I look forward to having you on the panel again in the future.
Awesome. Much love. Bye bye.
Peace. Coco, as usual, I always appreciate you being here and chiming in. What were your thoughts on this evening's live and or topic?
I think, like always, you're exquisite at what you do, and thank you again for having me on the panel, and happy Men's Mental Health Month. And if I may, for anybody who follows Lee or Cutie Pie, please show her some love. There were some pretty horrifying things said about her. Sorry, I just want to throw it out there because she's on her song.
We're also going to address that too. Believe you me, that's on my list of things to do.
Okay. Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me up here. And I love you, Ron, everybody on the panel, and we love Lee, and I'm going to probably go and show her some support. So thank you again for having me up.
You bet. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you. Amir, thank you so much for joining and being part of the conversation today. What were your thoughts on the live and or the topic?
So first and foremost, thank you for having me up. Secondly, happy Army Heritage Month, and happy Men's Mental Health Month as well. Number two, I think with like the trans women, I don't get why people host lives saying, "Oh, trans women are women." We are trans. There's a differentiator there, right? Like where there's a staunch difference between a trans woman and a trans man, and a man and a woman, right? There's a very big difference. I'm a trans man, right? I'm not a man. I'm a trans man. There's a difference. Number three, nobody's talking about this really, but there is I wouldn't say causation, but maybe like a correlation. Maybe not that, but there are more type 1 diabetics that are getting gender dysphoria or getting diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Like they're more likely to have it. So that's really interesting because type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. So I'm going to look more into that, but that's my thoughts.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. I sincerely appreciate you being here and being part of the conversation. And I hope to see you again on future lives, my friend.
Fantastic. You as well. Have a good night.
You too, Amir. All right, Naya Queen, thank you so much for coming up. What are your final thoughts for this evening?
Thank you for having me up too. It was honestly, I feel like you are so well spoken. I think you always have great conversations. And honestly, I was literally just like listening to the live on my way here in the car. But it was great. So thank you for having me up.
Oh, I appreciate you, Naya, and I hope to see you again soon, love. Spend time with your loved ones as always.
Bye.
All right, Identity, thank you for coming up. What are your first and final thoughts?
First, I'd like to say "rawr." Anyways, now thank you for hosting.
For my
Thank you
tiny
for
dog.
hosting this live, as always. Okay, so sex is not binary. Trans women and trans men are trans. Deal with it. And spaces for women and underage girls have to be female born and only allowed in those spaces. When it comes to the schools, I've seen many different people now put history instead of it just being taught in schools. Either way, there's so many different ways I've approached this in many rooms. And I've asked them, what do you teach in kindergarten? And they would say that your parents are this, you have this kind of parent. And then I would ask them, what would happen in first grade? They said they would repeat it because it's neat. Okay, so second grade. And I went on up until their teens. And it was the same rhetoric. It's just ridiculous. Then I talked to the people who host it where they said, teach history. Well, I told them, they say that it's taught heterosexually. I said, how do you know? How do you know everybody we learned about was heterosexual? You know, when it comes to, they're not going to announce it. There's people that were probably GAY or LES. We don't know. What's more important is what they did. So they want to teach what certain people did and also say what gender they were, which is ridiculous. And number two, there's been many discussions where I've talked to a person that now is deplatformed for doing horrible things. We all know who it is. And there's two other ones that actually accumulate over 600 followers every time they go live. And those three detransitioned late. And they all three agreed that they wished they were on puberty blockers for a reason. And that was because of hair growth, body structure, and or most importantly, the voice. And everyone saying that it just delays it is wrong. If you can take puberty blockers before you hit your puberty, those are the three main things that happen. It's surgery without getting the surgery. They keep talking about people with precocious puberty or this and that. It's ridiculous. The fact remains that they don't want the deep, for the trans women, don't want the deep voice, don't want the massive hair, don't want their piscadillo and their pelotas falling or getting bigger. I'm sorry. That's what it is. And those come from your top three trans women. I'm pro trans women. They wish to be on puberty blockers, and that's basically all I have to say.
Well, Identity, thank you so much for sharing and for joining this evening. I appreciate you as always. I look forward to connecting with you again on the future lives, my friend.
It's time to dance.
You have a great day, and I'm going to do my dance now.
All right.